Yeah, we came too far. In the darkest days, don't know where we are or who we are. Yeah, we came too far. In the darkest days, don't know where we are or who we are. Yeah, we came too far. In the darkest days, don't know where we are or who we are. Yeah, we came too far. In the darkest days.
Alright, what up, y'all? Planet of Fakes here. This is an update. I just brought y'all a story about a man that shot and fatally killed one Tulsa police officer. It looked like while transporting his body to another area to get his organs removed, the police in the motorcade got into an accident, serious accident. This is the video on it. I've never heard of anything like this occurring. I want y'all to check it out. Viewer discretion is advised. With that being said, what you heard and saw was the content. For additional content, click the link in the description. Like, follow, share, subscribe, comment, hit the bell, visit my community wall, and if you have time, go to www.amore-eager.com/TV. That's our Planet of Fakes 2. We are the new umbrella. Planet up.
To report. They're putting one in an ambulance. If you want to go to that, let's bring it back over to the right. You can see they're loading one of the officers in an ambulance. As we get the camera on it, we can see the officer that they were performing some life-saving procedures on. You see there at the top of your screen. We don't want to zoom in too much. We do know that there were some serious injuries. You see right there at the bottom of your screen, there's another officer in the grass. That officer was actually thrown from his motorcycle into that grassy area. And then there were two other officers. There are at least 3 officers that are seriously injured in this accident, possibly 1 or 2 more, but all I can see right now are at least 3. So you see, is that a group right there past those trees? Are they just kind of sitting there, or are they working on an officer? Looks like I'm going to try to move forward just a little bit more. Again, this was the procession that was bringing Sergeant Johnson in from the Tulsa area, bringing him to Oklahoma City. He's an organ donor, and so they were bringing him into Oklahoma City so they could utilize some of his organs. And there was an accident as they transitioned from the Turner Turnpike onto the Kilpatrick Turnpike, going westbound. Just before they got to the Broadway Extension exit, about a mile from the Broadway Extension exit, there was a major accident. It looked as though one of the motorcycles was involved with a collision with another vehicle on the highway, and then that started a chain reaction and caused the crash of at least 4 motorcycles that we're able to see. There are 3, what look to be 3 serious injuries to some of the motorcycle officers here at the Kilpatrick Turnpike westbound, just between Eastern and the Broadway Extension. So you can see a number of concerned officers there in the shot. There's a motorcycle right there that was involved. You can see, looks as though
Planet of the Fakes and Pig Star HH News. 2 troopers released, 1 in hospital after procession for Tulsa Police Sgt crashes on Oklahoma City Highway. Oklahoma City, the motorcade leading the procession for Tulsa Police Sgt. Craig Johnson crashed on an Oklahoma City highway late Thursday morning. At least 3 troopers leading the procession hit an SUV heading westbound on the John Kilpatrick Turnpike just before the Broadway Extension around 10:30 a.m. The procession left Tulsa earlier in the morning headed for LifeShare Transplant Donor Services of Oklahoma. In a press conference Thursday afternoon, OHP officials gave an update on the 3 troopers injured during the crash. They named the 3 involved as Trooper Rocky Barnes, 22-year veteran, Trooper Steve Eason, 18-year veteran, and Trooper Ron Watson, 30-year veteran. They say Troopers Eason and Watson are from the Tulsa Department and were released from the hospital. Trooper Barnes is from the Oklahoma City Department and is still in the hospital. He is expected to recover. The investigation into exactly what caused the crash is ongoing. The procession, including the ambulance carrying Sgt. Johnson, continued after the highway became clear enough to move past. The procession was headed to a hospital in Oklahoma City for Sgt. Johnson's organs to be donated. Full video link in the description. Like, follow, share, subscribe, and comment, hit the bell. And, if you have time, thank you very, very, very much. Go to www.
Anybody else?
So do we know exactly, we don't know how this happened and where they're coming from? Just kind of walk us through what happened.
Right. They were assisting Tulsa PD with the escort here to Oklahoma City area. And as far as the specifics of the accident, as I said before, I don't have those specifics at this time. I have not talked to any of the investigators yet. So before I address any of those questions, I'd like to talk to those people and make sure that they've wrapped up their investigation and confirm the information before I release any details on that crash.
When do you think that might be? 'Cause I know everybody, all I'm getting asked is, how are they doing, how are they doing? And
Yeah.
in Tulsa, people are really on edge right now. Just
Right.
they don't want any other
Well, I can tell you, like I said, the 2 troopers have been released. One is still being treated at the hospital at this time. As far as the details on the accident, I'm going to say probably sometime maybe next week, maybe the middle to the latter part of next week before they have more detailed information about what happened.
So one's still in the hospital.
Correct.
But we expect him to survive?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Is that you said there were 2 Tulsa troopers and 1 Oklahoma City trooper, right?
That's correct. 2 troopers from that work the Tulsa area and 1 trooper that works the Oklahoma City area.
Do you know which ones were released, of the 2 that were released, were Tulsa or one?
I believe they were both from the Tulsa area. Okay.
Were any other individuals taken to the hospital or injured in the crash?
No. No.
What happened to the driver of the SUV?
She was interviewed there at the scene, and she was released from the scene.
Do we know what she said at all? Like what?
No, I have not talked to her, and again, I have not talked to any of the troopers that were investigating the accident.
This has obviously been a really hard week for law enforcement, especially, in Tulsa. Can you talk a little bit about how it is to be in law enforcement after, multiple things have happened within a few days?
Very challenging right now. But I made a statement earlier today that, we train for this job, and this is part of the training that we go through. We understand that we have a job to do, and as difficult as it is, you have to put those feelings and emotions in a place and deal with them after you take care of business at hand, and go back and then deal with those emotions. But while you're going through this, everyone that wears a uniform across the country, we all train, and situations like this are extremely unfortunate, but they happen, and you have to be prepared for it as best you can. Take care of business, handle business, do what you need to do, and try to take your feelings out of it at the time. Just take care of business.
Do you know where the Procession was on its way to?
I do not.
It was on its way to a facility here to harvest tissue.
Okay. I was not made aware of that. Okay. I just know it was headed to the Oklahoma City area.
We've got the troopers' names now. Can you guide us in the direction of the 2 that have been released versus the one still in?
As far as what do you mean?
The troopers, like which one of the 2, which one of the 3 still in hospital? Trooper Barnes, Trooper Eason, and Trooper Watson.
Right. Are we releasing that?
No.
Okay. We're not able to release that at this time.
I know law enforcement was already there on scene. How helpful and critical was that to be able to get those troopers help just as soon as possible?
Extremely critical. When you got people that are there that are able to start administering first aid right off the bat, by the time the paramedics get there, there at least have been some life-saving measures taken so they can take over once they get there. So, we were fortunate enough to have a head start as far as medical treatment.
Do you know what life-saving measures were taken at the scene?
I do not, no.
I'm sorry if you mentioned this already. What were the injuries of the 2 who have already been released?
I don't have any specifics on the injuries, but all I know is they were treated and released. They have been treated and released.
And again, are you positive that the two that have been released belong to Tulsa area troopers?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. Again, I want to thank you all for coming out at this moment. Unless anyone has any further questions or anything, just want to say that we're going to be in prayer for the troopers and their families and wishing them a speedy recovery for all those involved, and hoping for the best outcome possible for those guys. Thank you all for coming. Okay.
All right, this is our live coverage there from Oklahoma City. Captain Paul Timmons releasing some information, not a lot, about what happened this morning. Let's go over what we do know for sure. Let's start with the 3 troopers who were injured in the accident involving the procession escorting the body of Sergeant Craig Johnson this morning. Now, these are the troopers who went down. They were all riding motorcycles. Now, we don't have them. Again, these just came across, and they're not matching names with faith. Trooper Steve Eason, an 18-year veteran of the patrol. Trooper Ron Watson, a 30-year veteran of the patrol. Now, 2 of the 3 you see are based out of Tulsa, 1 in Oklahoma City. The one from Oklahoma City remains in the hospital. We do not know the extent of his injuries at this point, although Captain Timmons said he is expected to recover. The 2 troopers from Tulsa who were hurt have been treated and released at this point, so very good news. Let's take you now to the scene this morning. It was shortly before 11 o'clock this morning on the Kilpatrick Turnpike in Oklahoma City. Here's the scene. You see some of the motorcycles that are parked. You see 1 motorcycle right there down. 3 motorcycles were down in all. And here's the holdup. You see in the westbound lanes, part of that procession, and then as it goes back, just cars, a lot of that's procession, and then cars were backed up for miles. Other side, eastbound, still allowed to go for a while. That was cleared also to get emergency vehicles into the area. Captain Timmons not releasing exactly what happened. We've heard various reports of what happened, so we're not going to go into the speculation other than to say there were signs that there was an SUV that was involved in this in some way. That silver SUV on the far right of the screen that you can see. It had pulled onto the Kilpatrick Turnpike and at some point either slowed down or impeded the path, or something happened there. But you can see where the collision at the back side of that SUV happened. One of the troopers on a motorcycle hit it, and at that point it's our understanding that there was a chain reaction taking down 2 other riders. Again, this was a highway patrol that was part of that procession that had joined so many, dozens and dozens of Tulsa officers that we showed you yesterday. They had gone to the medical examiner yesterday, and then their plans were to go over to Oklahoma City yesterday, but that happened again this morning. And then this terrible accident. And it all surrounds the respect that's being shown to this man here. We've talked a lot about Sergeant Craig Johnson, a veteran of the Tulsa Police Department, 15-year veteran, who was shot along with another officer on Monday morning in Tulsa. The following day, Sergeant Johnson died. Here is the other officer who was with him. This is a rookie on the force who had originally responded to a traffic stop on Monday morning, Aresh Zarkishan. He remains in the hospital in Tulsa under care, and we're continuing to check on him, and prayers from the community going out for his care. So again, what we just heard there from the captain with the Oklahoma Highway Patrol is that they're still investigating what happened this morning, the circumstances of that accident involving the procession, which led to the injuries of 3 troopers. As we learn more, we'll bring that to you here on air and on the Fox 23 News app. The news starts again at 5 o'clock.
He gave me perfume, jewelry.
Forget jewelry.
Other than that, nothing.
What about a car?
He gave me a car. I would pay him back when I could.
How could you forget that?
I'm sorry. I'm just a little nervous.
It's more than a little nerves.
Next Judge Judy. Today at 4:30 on Fox 23.
Hello, I'm William Shatner. And you may not know this about me, but years
to report and they're putting one in an ambulance. If you want to go to that, let's bring it back over to the right. You can see they're loading one of the officers in an ambulance. As we get the camera on it, we can zoom in right there. This is the officer that they were performing some life-saving procedures on. You see there at the top of your screen. We don't want to zoom in too much. We do know that there were some serious injuries. You see right there at the bottom of your screen, there's another officer in the grass. That officer was actually thrown from his motorcycle into that grassy area, and then there were two other officers. There are at least 3 officers that are seriously injured in this accident, possibly 1 or 2 more, but all I can see right now are at least 3. So you see, is that a group right there past those trees? Are they just kind of sitting there, or are they working on an officer? Johnson, in from the Tulsa area. He is the officer that was shot and killed in Tulsa, and they were bringing him to Oklahoma City. He is an organ donor, and so they were bringing him into Oklahoma City so they could utilize some of his organs. And there was an accident as they transitioned from the Turner Turnpike onto the Kilpatrick Turnpike, going westbound. Just before they got to the Broadway Extension exit, about a mile from the Broadway Extension exit, there was a major accident. It looked as though one of the motorcycles was involved with a collision with another vehicle on the highway, and then that started a chain reaction and caused the crash of at least 4 motorcycles that we're able to see. There are 3, what look to be 3 serious injuries to some of the motorcycle officers here at the Kilpatrick Turnpike westbound, just between Eastern and the Broadway Extension. So you can see a number of concerned officers there in the shot. There's a motorcycle right there that was involved. You can see it looks as though, are they working on somebody right there, or they just looks like they're just gathered around to talk about what's happening here. If we move to the right just a little bit more along the grass, you'll see another officer. This officer was actually thrown from his motorcycle and came to rest right here in the grass. We don't know the condition of these officers. We do know that that many of them are in serious condition, given the urgency of the officers on the ground and how quickly they were able to get ambulances to this location. You can see there's 2 ambulances in the shot right now. There is at least 1 other ambulance just to the left of those, and then of course first responders. A number of first responders on the scene, and fortunately, you have all of those officers, all of those troopers and Oklahoma City police officers, Tulsa police officers, and all of those first responders are very well trained in first aid. A lot of those guys are combat medics. They're trained in CPR. They're trained in life-saving techniques. So they quickly went into action. If you were with us on Facebook Live as this happened, you saw how quickly they went into action, shut down the highway, and started performing life-saving procedures on their fellow officers and first aid. So you see 1 ambulance quickly making its way out of the area. We've got 2 more ambulances that are being loaded up right now, and of course these ambulances are going to get a police escort all the way to the hospital. We're going to work to get information for you on what happened here. And again, Sky 5 was over the scene when this accident occurred. I don't know if we actually caught the accident on video. Did we catch it on video, Francisco, or we were? This procession was long, so the motorcycles were way out ahead, and we were following the vehicle that had Officer Johnson in it when the accident occurred. But I saw the accident right as it was happening. I didn't see exactly what happened to cause the accident, but I saw some motorcycles went flying across the highway, and some officers, and it was, again, you can imagine, very difficult to see. If you've ever witnessed an accident, it's difficult to see anyway, but to know that there are a number of police officers down there involved in this accident because of what they were doing makes it even tougher. And I know many of you share that sentiment with me. Appreciate you joining us here on Facebook Live. Even though this is a difficult thing to report, It's something that will be talked about for quite a while. It's scary to not know the condition of those law enforcement officers on the ground down there. We assume that those motorcycles are troopers. I don't know for sure if they're troopers or if they're a group of officers to include not Oklahoma City Police, but troopers and Tulsa Police Department, and there may be some Oklahoma City Police Department motorcycle vehicles in there, motorcycle officers in that group. But you can see a number of concerned and very, very concerned officers there on the ground, and there's a whole group of them. There's the Oklahoma Highway Patrol and probably some. It almost looks like some county vehicles, like some sheriff's office vehicles down there. But we do know at least Can you turn my microphone down just for a second? Or you can turn my microphone back on. Okay, so I'm just getting more information here for about what happened to this accident. The first ambulance that left, they're going to OU Medical. There was a second ambulance that also left. Air One is following the first ambulance as they're taking him to OU Med. The last ambulance, the third and final ambulance, is leaving now. Francisco, if you want to zoom out and come to the right, you can see that ambulance leaving the area. Now, what Air One said was they believed that one of the motorcycles struck a civilian vehicle, or the silver SUV that we saw earlier, struck that vehicle and... Say again? Yeah, you bet. And they believe that it struck that vehicle, pulled out into the traffic, and you can imagine this procession was at least 2 miles long, 1.5 miles to 2 miles long. Motorcycles, police cars, so there was a long line of motorcycles, probably 200 or 300 yards long, and 20 motorcycles at the beginning that were leading this procession. And then following that, there were troopers, and then members of the Tulsa Police Department in their vehicles, and then Oklahoma City Police Department that joined them on the turnpike right as they transitioned from the Turner Turnpike to the Kilpatrick Turnpike. Oklahoma City Police Department joined them, making their way along the Kilpatrick Turnpike westbound. And just prior to them getting to the Broadway Extension exit, there was an accident. There was a collision that happened between what we believe between a motorcycle, and this is also corroborated by Air One, and that silver vehicle that you see in your shot. You can see, if we zoom in closer to that vehicle, on the back of it, you can see quite a bit of damage to the back of that silver vehicle right there. Now, we believe that that motorcycle possibly collided with that vehicle, and then maybe ran into a couple of the other motorcycles. But a number of motorcycles involved in this accident here on the Kilpatrick Turnpike. A number of injuries, at least 3 serious injuries, and we hope it's just injuries to these officers. We know that they were performing some life-saving procedures on at least 2, possibly 3, all 3 of those officers that are on the ground. And I know family and friends are just now finding out about this. And if you found out here on Facebook Live or on the KOCO mobile app. But believe me when I say our hearts and prayers go out to all of you, especially the family of Sergeant Johnson and these 3 officers that were involved in this accident. You can see the devastation and the damage caused to that motorcycle there, and then there are a few more. We know one officer was thrown from his motorcycle and landed on the side of the highway, and Sky 5 was over the scene when it happened. I don't know if we had the camera on it. If you can leave a comment on Facebook Live and let us know if we had the camera on it when it happened. I don't know. I was the accident when it occurred. I didn't see what actually caused it at the moment it happened, but I did see motorcycles flying across the highway, and that's a very difficult thing to see. Like I said before, if you've ever seen an accident, you know how difficult that is anyway. But this, again, is going to take a while to get cleaned up as they investigate what happened here at the scene here on the Kilpatrick Turnpike, westbound between Eastern and the Broadway Extension. This just to bring you up to speed on what was happening here, or what we were covering. Sky 5 was over the procession that was bringing Sergeant Johnson, the officer that was killed in the line of duty in Tulsa, and they were bringing him from Tulsa into Oklahoma City. Sergeant Johnson was an organ donor, and they were bringing him here to Oklahoma City where they could utilize some of his organs. Now, while they were making their way along the Kilpatrick Turnpike, they were joined with the Oklahoma City Police Department, and this whole procession was about 1.5 miles long, and it was led by a number of motorcycles. And these motorcycles had their lights on, and they were leading. All right, I have IFB now. All right, so we're live on air now. That's why I stopped talking on Facebook Live. So. Wow. Okay, so it doesn't look like they're going to go to us here in Sky 5. So I'll keep talking to you on Facebook Live and the KOCO mobile app. But I would circle this and get around on the other side of it to give you a better view from all sides. But there's a large antenna that's just on the other side of the highway that prevents me from circling around the scene. So we kind of have to stay here on the north side of the scene, looking back to the south at what's happening here. Again, this is in Oklahoma City. This is the Kilpatrick Turnpike westbound. And then they have it shut down at Eastern, so you have to exit Eastern. And I can tell you there's a little bit of a backup in traffic, and rightly so. They have the highway shut down here because of this horrific accident that happened just moments ago as Sky 5 was covering the procession that was bringing Sergeant Johnson from Tulsa into Oklahoma City. Sergeant Johnson, if you'll remember, he was the officer in Tulsa that was killed in the line of duty. He was shot along with a fellow officer. The other officer in Tulsa is still in the hospital but recovering, and Sergeant Johnson unfortunately lost his life. And our hearts and prayers go out to that family. But now we have to deal with the devastation of a major accident that happened here on the Kilpatrick Turnpike as they were bringing Sergeant Johnson into Oklahoma City. We were following those motorcycles as they were making their way into the Edmond area. They were driving westbound along the Kilpatrick Turnpike, and just prior to getting to the Broadway Extension exit, we believe, and this was also confirmed by Air One, that one of the motorcycle officers ran into the back of a silver SUV that we're trying to get in our shot right now. And there you go, that silver SUV. We believe that vehicle is also involved in this. So what Air One said was they believed and this isn't completely confirmed, but they believe that a motorcycle ran into the back of that vehicle. They said that they thought that vehicle may have pulled out into traffic, and then one of the motorcycles struck that vehicle, which caused kind of a chain reaction. You can imagine when a motorcycle hits, it's just got the two wheels, so it can veer off to one direction, and there were a number of other officers there on their motorcycles, and it caused a number. And it looks like there's a kind of a maybe, but possibly motorcycles from some different agencies. We know that there were the Oklahoma Highway Patrol was part of this procession with their motorcycles, and I don't know if Tulsa was also involved, but that looks like that guy with the gold helmet. I don't know if that's a trooper or a Tulsa officer. That's a trooper right there that just passed by. So I think it's Tulsa Police Department and Oklahoma Highway Patrol on their motorcycles. Now we're going to try to get confirmation on what officers were injured, if they were troopers or if they were police officers. Regardless, these are law enforcement officers that were performing a duty, and a devastating accident happened here on the Kilpatrick Turnpike, causing the injury of a number of officers, and we are definitely thinking about them, and our hearts and prayers go out to everyone involved here. We know that there are a lot of very concerned friends and fellow officers on the ground right now. I can tell you that both east and westbound Kilpatrick Turnpike right here in this area at a major slowdown. So Sky 5's got you inside. And Eastern, Kilpatrick Turnpike westbound at Eastern is shut down, and there's a backup that extends for about a mile. So to that next mile section, next mile road. And then eastbound Kilpatrick Turnpike is a slowdown. They have it shut down to just, I believe, 2 lanes, but really everyone's taking just 1 lane and slowing down significantly to try to see what's going on here at the Turnpike. And it's got a backup that extends on eastbound Kilpatrick Turnpike for about 2 miles, all the way to, I believe that's not Western, but Santa Fe. And then the Broadway Extension southbound is a major slowdown. They have the highway shut down over there. I don't know why, but they have, I wonder if that was just to get those ambulances around there, but they've got southbound Broadway Extension shut down right at the on-ramp from westbound Kilpatrick onto southbound Broadway Extension. I'm assuming that is for this procession. They had it shut down so that they could get the traffic through there. So that's possibly why that's happening. They still have it shut down even though this accident occurred. So they're trying to get vehicles and everything off of the road now. The police officers, they're lining up along the shoulder now to the right of where this accident occurred, and it looks like they are going to try to get the highway open back up again. They already took the injured police officers away in an ambulance. There were 3 ambulances on the scene that arrived, and they got here quickly, I can assure you. And now it looks like they're trying to get things lined up again and start heading, and that's why this procession was occurring. So it was just a convoy of vehicles from Tulsa into Oklahoma City, and they were joined by Oklahoma Highway Patrol, Oklahoma City Police Department. So you can imagine a number of law enforcement agencies joining this procession, and cars were pulling over to the side of the road, and we don't really know what happened with that silver SUV that we showed moments ago, and why there was an accident that happened with that SUV. We know that officers were talking to the individual. It looked like there may have been a couple of individuals in that car to try to get an understanding of what happened, but I guarantee you there were a lot of witnesses on the ground that saw exactly what happened, and is on scene and we're able to talk to them, we will get that information so that we can pass it along to you. But again, a tragic situation happening here on the Kilpatrick Turnpike. This is westbound Kilpatrick Turnpike at in between Broadway Extension exit and out on or onto the Kilpatrick Turnpike going westbound from Eastern. They have it shut down there, and you're going to have to exit there as well if you're on the Turnpike. And then they have it shut down at Broadway Extension southbound at the on-ramp from westbound Kilpatrick Turnpike onto southbound Broadway Extension, and that is so that all this traffic and this whole procession can get through there. All these law enforcement vehicles can get through. Looks like there's I'm looking out my right door. Looks like there's a major fire out there. I'm seeing a lot of smoke. That just caught my attention, but we'll stay on this right here. You can see we're looking at Broadway Extension. So you see the backup there on Broadway Extension as they have it shut down, and that backup extends for about a mile as you right there where traffic merges from Kelly onto the Broadway Extension, or from Memorial onto the Broadway Extension, and then you can see the traffic there on eastbound Kilpatrick Turnpike that extends down to about Santa Fe and all the way up to where this accident is. And that's mainly because they do have it shut down to only 2 lanes there, but all the vehicles are going to that far right lane as they're passing, and they're also slowing down just to see what's happened here. And I know many of you are just joining us here on Facebook Live, and this, again, a very difficult thing to report. Very tragic situations that's happened here on the Kilpatrick Turnpike as Sergeant Johnson, the officer that was shot in Tulsa, was being brought into Oklahoma City, and the motorcycles that were leading this procession, there was an accident that occurred. We believe, and Air One believes, the Oklahoma City Police Department believes, that one of the motorcycle officers ran into the back of another individual, another civilian vehicle that was on the highway that kind of pulled into the traffic, kind of pulled into where that procession was, and there was a collision that happened. That in turn caused kind of a chain reaction, and a number of motorcycles went down. Now we know of at least 3 officers with injuries. It looked as though a couple of those injuries were very critical because they were performing CPR and some life-saving procedures on a couple of those officers, and it does look now like this procession is going to start making its way into Oklahoma City again as they continue the investigation here at this scene, where they are going to try to make sense of what happened here that caused the injuries of a number of police officers here, and our hearts and our prayers definitely go out to them. I'm going to try to get some information from the station on whether they just want us to follow this vehicle into the hospital, or which is what we were covering in the first place, or stay here at the scene. I'm assuming they're going to want us to follow the ambulance, but I'm going to call them. Can you call them and find out, Francisco? Okay. No, we're following the ambulance. We're following the ambulance. All right, so they're wanting us to follow this ambulance. So again, if you're joining us on Facebook Live, Sky 5 was over this convoy of, or this person. Sergeant Johnson, many of you know, is the officer from Tulsa who was involved in an officer in a shooting and he lost his life. There were 2 officers at the same scene. Both of them were shot. Both were in critical condition for a while. Sergeant Johnson unfortunately lost his life. His other partner, his other fellow officer, was also shot and is remaining in the hospital in serious condition but recovering. And that's good news. Unfortunately, Sergeant Johnson, and this is Craig Johnson, Sergeant Craig Johnson, lost his life, and the other officer, Arash Zarkeshian, I want to make sure I get that right, is recovering at a hospital in Tulsa. So we're going to continue to follow what's happening here. This is the procession here. You can see the ambulance that's carrying the body of Sergeant Craig Johnson as they bring him into Oklahoma City. Again, the reason that they're bringing him from Tulsa into Oklahoma City is because the hospital here can handle organs for anyone who has deceased and is an organ donor, and that's what's happened here with Craig Johnson. So they're bringing him into Oklahoma City so they can do that, and they are respecting him in the best way that they know how, and that is with a line of law enforcement vehicles that are paving the way to try to make it safely into Oklahoma City so that they can get his body there. Unfortunately, we think it was Oklahoma Highway Patrol as well as a police department, whether it was Tulsa Police Department, we assume it was Tulsa Police Department, and the Oklahoma Highway Patrol, the troopers, driving motorcycles, and those motorcycles were leading this procession into Oklahoma City. And I'm going to kind of make a turn to the left here. Okay, so southbound Broadway Extension is open back up now. So if you were wondering about that, southbound Broadway Extension now open back up. It was closed down until they brought this procession through. It is now back open. So I'm trying to see. I know that there's a number of aircraft out here, and I'm just looking to see where they are before I continue southbound. And so we are southbound along, okay, I've got them inside now. Southbound along the Broadway Extension, and we're approaching Britain. So, breaking news happening earlier, Sky 5 was the only helicopter covering the procession of Sergeant Craig Johnson as they were bringing him along the Kilpatrick Turnpike into Oklahoma City when the accident occurred involving one silver SUV, civilian vehicle, and a number of law enforcement motorcycle officers. And also this includes a number of injuries, some of them very severe. We were over the scene when they were performing some life-saving procedures on a couple of those officers, and very difficult thing to witness, and you can imagine. I don't think we had the camera on the motorcycles when the accident occurred, and that was a good thing. I was actually looking up ahead when the accident occurred and witnessed it right as it happened. So I didn't see the initial collision, but I looked ahead and saw a number of motorcycles flying across the highway, along with one of the motorcycle officers that was thrown from his motorcycle quite a distance into the shoulder, into the grass on the side of the highway. And then we were live on Facebook when that happened. So those of you that were with us on Facebook, you witnessed it as it was happening and were the first to see that. And I'm sorry, because that's, it's a difficult thing to witness, and it's a difficult thing to report. Ambulance that's carrying Sergeant Craig Johnson. Now, this story has hurt many Oklahomans, and I know many Tulsans, especially in the law enforcement community, as they lost one of their own. And when a police department loses an officer, it doesn't just affect that police department. It affects all law enforcement. All law enforcement feel it, regardless of the city, county, state, country. All officers feel it, and it's the same way with, you know, the military. I'm going to try to cross over. It looks like they're exiting, and they're going westbound now on 63rd. I wonder what hospital they're going to. All right, now they're turning southbound. All right, so they're on 63rd Street now. Now they're turning southbound into this area, and I assume that there's a location down there that is specifically for organ donation, maybe. But you can see Air One has been over this from the beginning as they were bringing Sergeant Craig Johnson down the Turner Turnpike. Air One has been over the scene, and Sky 5 has been over the procession for almost the majority of it. We picked it up about the Wellston area. I think that's where they're going. It looks that's where they're turning in. That's an interesting location. So this procession has definitely decreased in the number of vehicles that were here, that were on it, and you can see it looks as though they're going to just bring that ambulance inside that building, and that's really kind of a good thing. Maybe. Looks like it may not be. It might just be going in front of the building, or they might back it in. But that is the ambulance that is carrying Sergeant Craig Johnson, the Tulsa police officer, and you can see a number of Tulsa police officer vehicles there that brought their fellow officer here into Oklahoma City. Francisco, if you can zoom out a little bit and get those Tulsa police officer vehicles there, you can see them lining the street. And now they're having to also deal with the difficulty of what happened while they were bringing their fellow officer here, and cope with that. That's got to be traumatic, because I know many of those officers witnessed what happened there on the highway, and to think that they're already dealing with the emotion of having to bring their fellow officer here that lost his life. Now they're also having to deal with the trauma from the devastating accident that happened while they were doing that. Again, Air One has been over the scene this whole time, providing security from the air, and Sky 5, when the accident occurred on the Kilpatrick Turnpike, Sky 5 was the only news helicopter covering that at the time, and now you'll get to see these officers as they honor their fallen officers. They bring him out of this ambulance, and this will more than likely be, the last time that they will see the body of their fellow officers as they come to attention. And I'm just going to be silent as they bring Officer Johnson out of here. Always a somber scene as you deal with the loss of life of anyone, but if a flag draped you too, brother, sorry about all that. So Air One was just talking to us. He's leaving the scene. He's been covering this this whole time, and I'm sure he's shaken up by it as well. But if I was just about to say, if the sight of a casket draped by an American flag just doesn't touch you and make you the least bit emotional, I don't know what does. It always does for me, but that's coming from a military background when I've had to see too many of those. But to see one draped over the casket of a law enforcement officer, and I've worked with a number of the Tulsa police officers and members of law enforcement in the Tulsa area, and had some good friends that flew for the Tulsa Police Department and worked for the Tulsa Police Department, so I know how it affects them. And to see this, my hearts go out to them, definitely. We're going to make our way back to the scene of that accident, but for those of you that are just joining us, we'll tell you what's happening here. This ambulance that we just had the camera on, that was the ambulance that brought Sergeant Craig Johnson, who is the fallen officer that lost his life in a shooting in Tulsa just days ago. He's an organ donor, so they brought him here to this facility that handles that. And on the way, when the procession of law enforcement vehicles that were bringing him into Oklahoma City, as they were making their way from the Turner Turnpike onto the Kilpatrick Turnpike, just before getting to the Broadway Extension exit going westbound, they were involved in an accident. A number of motorcycle officers were involved in a serious accident that injured at least 3 officers that we were able to see. Now, those officers were taken away in an ambulance, and we are trying to work on getting the condition of those officers, but we know that a couple of them were in serious condition as they were performing some life-saving procedures on those officers, and very, very sad thing to witness. And I hope we didn't have the camera on it when it happened, because I witnessed it, and I hope we didn't capture that on camera, because it was not a good thing to see. But we are now flying northbound along the Broadway Extension, making our way back to that accident. And you want to, Francisco, can you confirm with them that that's what they want us to do? Okay. She said yes. All right, so we're going to go back to the scene of that terrible accident that happened. Golly, was that about 45 minutes ago, I would think? A sad day anyway, as family and fellow officers are having to bring Officer Craig Johnson from Tulsa into Oklahoma City, which would undoubtedly be his, the final time that they would be able to see him. They are planning on taking advantage of some of his organs, as he's an organ donor, and the facility here in Oklahoma City is a place that handles that, and that's where they were bringing him. And so I know how fluid social media is, and some of you are just joining us, and we appreciate you. I'm sorry that it's under these conditions, but sometimes it's good news, sometimes. And trying to get some closure for the family, but then for this accident to happen that has still shut down westbound Kilpatrick Turnpike. And the reason is for what you're seeing right here. One civilian vehicle and a number of motorcycle officers. We know that at least 3 officers were injured, some of them critically, as they were having to perform life-saving procedures on there. You can see them putting up crime tape, well, not crime tape now, but police tape, just to secure the scene. so that they can investigate what happened here. I can tell you that the Kilpatrick Turnpike westbound is going to be shut down for quite a while. Now you can get on from I-35, but you'll have to exit at Eastern. So if you can take another route, I would strongly recommend that, because they're just now putting up the police tape, which means that the investigation is going to start or continue, and will probably last for quite a while, because they don't take any accident lightly, but when it involves something as devastating as this, they definitely want to take their time to make sure that they get the story straight and the story right. But we can you go to the right and just take a look at those motorcycles again? You can see the devastation and understand how bad of an accident this actually was. Now, we believe that that motorcycle right there was the motorcycle that the officer was riding, and he was thrown from that motorcycle and landed in the grass a good, oh my gosh, 100 feet or farther. I mean, if you can zoom out just a little bit and keep that motorcycle in the shot, and then come to the right, he landed right there where that white thing is on the ground. And they were working on him right there, and so you can see just how far he was thrown from his motorcycle. I got you inside going under me. So, and there's another motorcycle that you see in our shot, another probably totaled motorcycle, and so investigators are going to be talking to witnesses on the ground and trying to build a story of what happened here that caused this accident. Now, what I can tell you from what I witnessed and corroborating a story with the Oklahoma City Police Department Air 1 that was also over the scene covering it, what he said was that he believed there's a silver SUV that is still on the scene. They believe that vehicle, no, it's to the right, nope, to the right. Keep going right. It's right there, on the shoulder. Yeah. So if I can, I'm gonna get around to the back of it, so you can see what the back of this vehicle looks like. The Air 1, or the Oklahoma City Police helicopter, believes, and this kind of matches what I saw, that one of the motorcycles ran into the back of that SUV that you see right there, and there is some pretty significant damage to the back of that vehicle. Now, when that motorcycle hit it, is there any way to zoom in any closer? Can you zoom in any closer? Oh yeah, sorry. Well, I gotta